Is this working?
Check, check.
Check, check.
We're good? Yeah? Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Bo Yee. I'll be your meeting moderator tonight. But more importantly, we have Donna Carpenter here, our guest for the evening, and why you all came here. Such an honor to meet Donna in the flesh. So I have a little thing to read. I have not memorized it. We're so glad that you're here for the first edition of Spotlight 802, a speaker series that brings engaging voices from across Vermont to share their insights, experiences, and expertise. Each month, we explore topics ranging from innovation and entrepreneurship to athletics, culture, and community impact. Whether you're here to be inspired, learn something new, or spark meaningful conversation, Spotlight 802 is your front row seat to ideas that shape our world. Now tonight we're honored to welcome Donna Carpenter, Chair of the Board at Burton Snowboards and a trailblazer in the world of snowboarding and social impact. Now from her early days helping build Burton alongside her late husband, Jake Burton Carpenter, to leading the company as its first female CEO, Donna has championed sustainability, equity, and youth empowerment through her work and through the Chill Foundation, who I think someone I went to Snowboard Academy with works there too. Bo, do you know Bo?
Nice, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. He's on our board.
Bo Twigs?
Yes,
right.
he's awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing. Thanks to Donna's leadership, Burton has become not only a global brand, but also a force for good, committing millions of dollars to values-aligned organizations and creating space for more women and underrepresented voices in the industry. Now, we'd also like to thank Muskoma Bank, the generous sponsor of this series, for making evenings like this possible. And tonight's format includes about 45 minutes of conversation between Donna and myself, followed by time for your questions. So get ready for an inspiring and thoughtful discussion, and please join me again in giving Donna a warm welcome. This is so exciting. So, fun fact, my school bus used to go by Donna's house as a kid. But anyways, so from the beginning, Donna, you've been a very big part. So let's go back to those early days. What drew you into the business in the early days, and what kept you there?
Yeah, it was Jake's crooked teeth.
Crooked teeth. Yeah.
Okay. He came.
They were charming?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I thought
There's
it was adorable.
I get it. No,
there
I get it.
was something
Yes.
adorable
Yeah.
about him.
Quirky, you know.
Yeah.
Like, yep. Unique.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we met on New Year's Eve at a bar in Londonderry, and I was living in New York City, and I was there for vacation, and
Yeah.
I saw him coming out of the men's room, and
You're like that one.
yeah, kind of cute. That was it.
Okay. All right. Okay. You know, it's as easy as that sometimes.
And you know what else? He was drinking. He was drinking Jack Daniels and milk.
Can you do that?
Because he was working 14, 15-hour days by himself, and he had an ulcer.
Oh no.
And
on the snowboards.
Yeah,
Okay. Wow.
by himself
Wow.
in a barn,
Mhm.
and the milk coated the
Sure.
stomach.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah, Jack
He
Daniels
had
and
his
milk.
method. All right. Well,
Yeah.
note it if I ever need that. The milk. The milk. And so, what did you learn from building the company alongside Jake, aside from the tip about if you get an ulcer?
Yeah. I learned so much from him. I think, the first lesson I really learned was to focus on what we were doing. He used to say, focus on the rider and what the rider wants and what the rider needs and what's going to make this sport better.
Yeah.
And the profit and the sales will follow.
Sure.
I think, honestly, before I met him, he really thought he was going to get rich quick. And, we all had this toy called the Snurfer. We used to
Yes.
take it out
Yeah.
when we went sledding. And he kept thinking, somebody's got to be doing something with this product. And he said, I'm going to do something and I'm going to get rich quick. And that did not happen.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and like I said, he was working 14-hour days.
Sure, yeah, trial and error.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember when he went out with some of those first boards and he left with 50 boards and he came back with 55. Because one dealer said, I don't want this stuff, take it back.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it was hard. But anyway, he started focusing on, you know, it was bigger than us.
Sure.
I think that that's what it was always about. It was always about this sport, and it was so much fun, right? Like, and we wanted to share that passion and share that joy and share that fun on the mountains. So we still say that at Burton. It's really our mission. Focus on the rider and the rider at heart, and everything else will follow. And perseverance. Right? I think if you had asked Jake what he was most proud of is that he never gave up.
Yeah, what kept him going?
I think that it was bigger than us.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't about us. It was about this sport. It was about the athletes. It was about the riders.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I think it was lucky we were together because, you know, there were times when he wanted to give up.
Sure.
And I would say, no, come on, we can do this. Yeah. And there were times when I was ready to throw in the towel. And he'd say, no, come on, we can do this. So at least it didn't happen at the same time. Right. So I learned perseverance. He was also an incredibly ethical businessman. You know, I always joke that my father, who maybe wasn't quite such an ethical businessman in his career, you know, said, why are you incorporating in Vermont? You should be incorporated in Delaware. Your trademark should be in the Canary Islands. Your patents should be over here. And it was like, no, we're a Vermont company. We're going to pay our taxes. We're going to do things ethically. So I learned a lot from him.
How did he get you on a board?
The first date we had.
No.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I thought he was kind of falling asleep, you know, the 14-hour days. And so I said, come on, well, let's go do this thing, you know. Okay. So we drove up a road at Stratton, and at the time it was a piece of wood with a rope on the end, 2 straps for your feet, and we wore high-top bindings. I mean, high-top sneakers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Must have been holes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And you fell a lot.
Well, when you have good equipment. So how has your personal identity shaped your leadership style over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, being a woman, you know, and I had a lot of empathy for our female riders and for our female leaders. And, you know, I was different than Jake. He really focused, he was a product guy, right? Mm-hmm. He just wanted to get into the details of the product.
The function.
And he was kind of happy to leave sales and operations and finance and those kind of things to me.
Okay, well, so it worked out.
It did.
Yeah, great team from the get-go. Now, from those early days to now, Burton has grown into a global brand. It's huge. Let's talk about what it takes to lead a company through that kind of evolution.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, I think we grew extremely fast, but we always had, first of all, we always funded our growth by our own profitability. We were not going to take on partners. We were not going to take on long-term debt. So we weren't going to, you know, maybe we could have grown twice as fast or whatever with an infusion of cash, but we stayed very disciplined to fund our growth through our own profitability so that we could stay full ownership of the company. And never overproduce. You know, we used to call Jake Captain Scarcity, right? You wanted to make sure that you know, you always had the demand, that you weren't putting more product out there. So yeah, you go with the growth.
Amazing. And you've spoken about oh shit moments in Burton's history. Can you share one that fundamentally changed how you lead?
Yeah, I think I talk about how my career has been defined by my oh shit moments, and they were really when I realized that we were not living up to the values that we had. And, you know, one that I talk about a lot is in 2002, Jake and I were in a meeting of global directors, all of our directors from around the world, Europe, Japan, and there were 25 people in the room and there were 2 women in the room. And we took a look around and said, oh shit.
And probably something only a woman would have noticed.
Yeah, and I think, I do think Jake also really realized that to be sustainable long-term, that you had to have diversity. So he really asked me, can you take that on and change that? And I think in the very beginning of the company, it wasn't like that. And then because we were growing very fast, and this is what I tell a lot of entrepreneurs, be careful when you grow fast that you have the culture that you want. What happened to us, we were pulling talent from primarily surf, skate, ski industry, and all of a sudden we became very male dominated. So we put our heads down and worked and looked at the ways we could hire, retain, and promote more women in the company. And we've gone from 10% at that meeting to pretty much 50%. A lot of my female senior managers are here tonight. Right there, that's right. And my senior team is actually more women than men. Yeah.
And what does it mean to lead with both privilege and purpose?
Yeah, that's, it's interesting you asked that question because I was asked not too long ago to give a talk to a women's group in Canada about power and privilege. So I really did a lot of thinking about it, and my thought about it was really informed by Brene Brown. I don't know how many of you know Brene Brown, but it's really that you can't deny your privilege, right? So you've got to take it as a responsibility. And the way she defined great leadership was privilege plus empathy plus courage, right? So using your power for the right things. So I see my ability to have influence over the company and the industry to push our purpose agenda, whether it's sustainability, whether it's more women in the industry. Right now we're really focused on racial diversity in both the sport and our company. So using that privilege to push forward a purpose agenda.
Soaking it in. There's a lot there. And how do you maintain authenticity and agility in a company that grows so much, that's grown so much?
Yeah, I think, at Burton, we talk about bringing our whole selves to work. We dress like this. This is dressing up. We bring our dogs to work. And we do the sport. Yeah. I used to say what we learned from the ski industry back in the 80s and the 90s is that they had lost their passion for the sport. I used to call them suits with spreadsheets. And you didn't see a lot of innovation in the ski industry. So I think part of it is staying close to the sport, staying close to the riders. We also have a real philosophy of listening to the athletes, listening to the riders. What do they want? Where do they see the sport coming? I think because things were really tough in the beginning and whatever, we developed a real sense of humility. I think humility is our number one value along with inclusion, right? Stay humble.
Yeah. So one of the things you've been most vocal about is equity as well, especially for women in snowboarding, which you touched on. What sparked your commitment to gender equality at Burton?
Yeah, it was really that. I mean, we had always, unlike many other sports, we always had this big event, the U.S. Open. It was always the biggest event. Yeah, Stratton and then Vail.
Before the Olympics, that's all we had.
Yeah,
and then
that's
Grand Prix.
Right. Yeah, she's a snowboarder. She's one of us. And I remember the first year that women were competing, I went to Jake and said, what do we do about prize money? And he said, we'd pay the women the same.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we paid our female athletes the same. So we always kind of had that, but then again, it was sparked by looking at our company and saying, oh, we've got to be proactive, right? We saw ourselves as very inclusive, inviting everybody in. But I think with historically marginalized groups, you've got to be proactive.
Otherwise, they're easily overlooked.
Easily overlooked and don't necessarily feel welcome. So it was a lot of work. We put our head down and really, things like changing our maternity and post-maternity policies. We have a policy, for example, if you're in a high-powered position at Burton, it's global, right? Sales, marketing, product. You've got to travel, right? So we've got a policy that for the first year of your child's life, we will pay for a caretaker to go with you or to be at home with you. We had to have kind of those progressive policies. And then the second thing women said they really craved was mentors. I think if you're in a group of all men, they naturally form those mentorship relationships. Hey, let's go get a beer, let's go for a ride, let's go play whatever. And so we put in very intentional mentorship programs, both like veteran women mentoring new women, as well as the senior management mentoring female directors. And it was so successful. It was after 2 years, 50% of the women who had participated had either been promoted or moved to a department that they wanted to be in, that they'd rather be in. That after a while the guys said, hey, what about us?
Wow.
So now our mentoring program includes men and women, and it's global. And we've, if you had asked me, would we be a mentoring culture? I would have said no way. But because of what we were doing for women, it's really translated, the men saw the advantage. But things like that where you've got to be really proactive. We did proactive coaching with women, proactive leadership training with women.
Amazing. So I think you answered this question. Would that be the biggest challenge in shifting Burton's leadership from 10% women to over 40% women, the support you were talking about?
Yeah, I think so, and also just perception, right? I think perception was hard to overcome. Hey, action sports is a men's sport. They're men's companies. You look at some of the surf or the skateboard, it's male dominated. So overcoming that perception and saying to women, you can have a successful career. Also, in the beginning, the women didn't have role models, right?
Yeah.
So the senior team was pretty much all male except for me. They didn't see a woman that was balancing family and her career. So the challenge was to get women to stay and promote them into leadership so that then they could become role models for the younger women. So it takes time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And would that be your advice to give to companies trying to move beyond performative inclusion? What you were just talking about, mentorship programs?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, alongside equity, another area where Burton has led the way is sustainability. Why was becoming a B corporation important to you?
Well, sustainability was another oh shit moment.
Okay.
And it really was, in the beginning, we were very worried about being perceived as hypocritical or greenwashing because we make a petroleum-based chemical product, snowboards, right? I always laugh that we're sustainability leaders. In the very beginning, one of my first jobs was in Southern Vermont, was dipping these wood boards into polyurethane. And if the wind blew a certain way, we lived next to a trailer park, they would all start calling, what is that smell?
Oh, wow.
And we had to wear like hazmat suits with, and now we're a sustainability leader or whatever. But, so really it was like, hey, maybe we're not going to be perfect, but we can certainly do things. And, we're in winter, right? And it's a crisis. And we've got to do our part. And the B Corporation really was just, Jake and I never measured our success just by profit, right? We really looked at it 3 ways. We looked at it in terms of the brand, how strong the brand was, Obviously, you've got to have profit to fund your growth, but also the people and the community and the culture was just as important as the profitability. So, you know, it kind of, again, like that was living up to our values to become a more sustainable, and B Corp is just a certification that says you are balancing profit with people and the environment. And there's actually, I mean, it has some teeth, right? There's some legal consequences if you misreport your environmental work or whatever, so.
And what role do you think companies should play in environmental advocacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with the outdoor industry, if you're in the outdoors industry, you're in the climate fight, right? And one of the
playground.
Yeah, it's our playground, and we need to protect it. And one of the interesting things that happened along the way was I started this sustainability initiative. We started to move very quickly on both our chemicals, the chemicals that we were using, as well as auditing our factories and making sure they were meeting the highest human rights standards possible. We're part of the Fair Labor Association, which are the highest human rights standards. And I remember being at a trade show, and Jeremy Jones, who's a Vermonter.
Friends of my brother.
Yep.
Down in Tahoe.
Yep.
Yep.
Amazing guy. He was really a visionary. He was a snowboarder, backcountry snowboarder, who saw what was happening to the glaciers and started very early on an organization called Protect Our Winters. And he came to me and he said, look, we're starting Protect Our Winters, we're getting this going, and we really would like to have Burton there. And my initial response was, Jeremy, I can't do that. I got to green my own house first. We've got a lot of work to do. I could see the work ahead, so much work ahead. And it was very interesting. He said to me, the outdoor industry, in terms of dollars, is bigger than big pharma.
Wow.
And we do not leverage that power and that influence. And he basically said to me, you can green your house all day long. That's great. It's not going to move the needle. Joining with other brands and joining with athletes and really advocating for change on a systemic level, that's going to, that's going to move the needle.
Interesting. And I think you might have touched on this, but I'll ask it again in case. How do you balance profitability with purpose in a consumer-driven industry?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any other company. We have a long-term business strategy. We call it our trail map. And it sits on equal footing with our purpose and impact strategy. So it's not an afterthought. It's really incorporated into everything we do. And it's people, planet, and sport. So it's our people, it's our employees, it's the people who work in the factories that we contract with, it's sustainability and environmental, and then it's protecting the sport from people like the IOC.
Who's that?
Yeah, well, the Olympics.
Oh, right.
The Ski Federation has control over snowboarding for the Olympics, and sometimes there's a bit of a conflict there. But really, for us, it's about protecting the sport and the health of the sport and the long-term sustainability of the sport. And that includes diversity, right? I think Jake even knew way back when at an entrepreneurial level that our sport was not going to sustain itself long term if we didn't have women and people of color participating.
He had a vision early on.
Early on.
Yeah, that's quite phenomenal. So looking ahead, what's next for Burton and for you? What are you most excited about for Burton's future?
Yeah, I'm really excited about Burton's future. I think our growth is going to come. We have phenomenal growth in China.
Oh yeah,
right
huge,
now.
Huge.
I mentioned that to you. China is actually 70% snowboarders, 30% skiers, and there's more women than men snowboarding.
I believe it.
It's an
I
interesting.
believe it. We had a lot of girls on our team.
Yeah, a lot of girls. So we're seeing growth there, and I also think with our soft goods, getting people that aren't snowboarders, that what we call riders at heart, who share our values, who have looked behind the curtain and seen what we're about and want to be part of our community. We have an incredible culture, an incredible community, a global community. And so I really see the future in our soft goods and continued growth.
Interesting. And I feel like when we were talking about like women's inclusion too, I felt like that was a big draw when I was in the skateboarding and snowboarding. Like a lot of the girls, they didn't really want to fall and ride, but they liked the gear.
Yeah,
Like the pretty pattern.
Yeah. And they learn differently, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like guys would take a board up, go to the top of the mountain.
Not knowing how to do it.
Not knowing how to do it.
And be back again the next
and
season.
crash 20
Oh, yeah.
times.
Oh, this is great.
And then they'd say to their girlfriend, yeah, I broke a few bones and I'm bruised, but come try it with me. It's like, I don't think so, So we did a lot with women's learn to ride and so forth. And now I think also the future is with snowboarders of color. We have done a tremendous amount of work. We started something called Culture Shifters, where we bring 150 influencers, athletes, professional athletes. We have like NFL athletes, we have DJs, people who snowboard and are of color and are usually the only one in their group. And we bring them together for a weekend in Aspen, and the energy is incredible. And we all have a lot of fun. But then we sit down and have some really difficult conversations. They talk about the barriers to snowboarding. And it's not just affordability. A lot of brands will say, oh, the problem is affordability. There are cultural barriers there. It's seen as a white sport. And so we will have some of these very difficult conversations. And the fact that I'm sitting there in the room and the CEO of Aspen is sitting there in the room listening goes a long way. And right now we've been able to move the needle. 30% of snowboarders are Black or Hispanic.
Zeb Powell.
30%. And Zeb Powell is our superstar.
Yeah. I see him all over social.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and we've changed our global team. Our global team is incredibly diverse now.
Amazing.
So I think it's, and that's what America is going to look like. The generation that's going to be majority non-white has been born. They are little kids. They are growing up. And if we don't attract them, we are not going to thrive.
And let's see, how do you see the snowboarding industry evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Maybe with those little kids in mind.
Yeah, I think, I see a couple trends happening. I see people who were passionate snowboarders now bringing their kids and family into it, and we're starting to kind of market that more, that oh my God, how much fun can you have as a family? I mean, it was the best times I ever had and Jake ever had was going with our kids. And I tell you, even as they get older, if you say, hey, I'm going to Vail for a week, they find a way to get out of the job. Or, they'll find a way to get there. So I see that, I see R&D innovation. We have something called the step-on binding that has really changed things. You can step right into it.
What is R&D?
Research and development.
Oh, okay, right, got it. I'm not a business person.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah,
got it.
Which we have, we have an incredible R&D facility, right?
They've had those for a long time, though.
Yeah, it's been about 6-7 years or whatever, but I think that that's really changed, and you know, we do R&D pretty much for the whole industry.
Oh wow, right. Everyone follows in your footsteps.
Yeah.
I mean, Burton's always had the best bindings from the beginning.
Yes. So, I mean, you know, you see participation kind of go like that, but I think between getting families really engaged, getting more women engaged, and getting people of color engaged, we're going to continue to see growth. And it's so much fun.
Yeah. So why
so
not?
much fun.
Right.
I talk about it as a spiritual experience.
Oh yeah.
You know, you are one with the mountain.
Oh yeah.
No, your boots don't hurt, you don't have those poles, right? and it's very spiritual. I mean, I remember after my husband passed, I think I rode almost every day.
Oh, nice.
And it just brought me that peace and that joy.
Yeah.
And
Very therapeutic.
it is.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. What legacy do you hope to leave, not just at Burton, but in the broader outdoor business community?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about my contribution to the company, I think it is kind of pivoting us to being purpose-led, right? To really, in every decision we make, we're thinking about how does it impact people? How does it impact the sport? How does it impact the environment? And looking for ways to measure those things beyond profit. And, you know, and also I have to say the Chill Foundation. You know, it's 30 years old this year.
Wow.
Yeah. And it basically started as a Learn to Ride program in Vermont. We wanted to get back to teenagers. When we first started, it was teenagers.
I remember having that at school.
Yeah, who put us on the map. They would take this thing out of the box, put it together, and go find a local hill to do it, right? People my age were not doing that, right? It was teenagers. And we really wanted to get teenagers who otherwise wouldn't ever have, you know, who live near the mountains, but never imagine themselves in the mountain. So we started working with agencies here in Burlington to get us kids who were really facing life challenges. And we started this program with them where we took them snowboarding for 6 weeks, and we talked about the things that they needed to learn to snowboard: courage, patience, persistence, respect for each other and for the mountain. And then we added, so it started to grow. And we added skateboarding, which I know you're a skateboarder, yes, and stand-up paddle. And it's really become a youth development program that uses board sports as the vehicle. And we're in 8 countries, 27 cities, and we serve 3,000 kids.
All year round?
Yeah, all year round. And what we're doing now is something I'm really excited about. The next step with Chill is we're taking these kids who want to see a career path in the outdoor industry. They don't necessarily see themselves and they don't know what the possibilities are. So we just piloted last summer an internship program with about 30 of our alumni. They came to Burlington and got trained on basic office skills and protocol, and then they were sent out as interns to about 5 different companies. And we really hope to expand that to become a pipeline to the outdoor industry with these kids. So I think Chill will be part of my legacy. I think the female athletes, you know, one of the things I did when I was CEO, we had a rider, a woman named Kimi Fasani. There's a great movie about her called Butterfly in a Blizzard. And she called me. I'm very close to the female athletes. And she called me and she was sort of trying to tell me something. And all of a sudden I realized, I said, "Oh my God, Kimmy, you're pregnant. That's great." And she said, "Yeah, but my contract is up in 2 months." And now normally what every company did was look at that as a disability and cut their salaries by at least 40%. That was the norm. It was looked at as a disability and the salary was cut. or eliminate it. And I said to her, let's pioneer this. Let's do this together. So Burton became the first company, not the first snowboard company, the first sports company ahead of Nike to offer maternity and post-maternity leave for our female athletes.
What year was that?
That
What year?
was, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I want to say it was 2016.
Yeah.
All right. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you got the legacy already. And you're
Yes,
still going.
and I'm still going.
You're still going. All right.
And then I think another legacy is, you know, I think that one of our competitive advantages and one of the reasons we've been able to stay rooted in our values is because we're privately held and we're a family business. Right now there's one shareholder, right? And so we can decide, hey, you know what, we're going to take less of a profit this year and put more into our sustainability efforts. Or we're going to take less of a profit this year and put more into our equity work. And we have that ability. We're not answering to shareholders. So one thing I'm really focused on right now is transitioning to the next generation. I have my son here, George, who is taking the lead ownership role in the future. So I'm really working on that transition. So I want the legacy of Burton to be a family-held private company, always headquartered and rooted in Vermont.
Yay.
Okay, we have a lightning round now.
Okay.
For the Q&A.
Okay.
Quick, fun questions.
All right.
And even on a higher note. So one word to describe your leadership style.
You know, I used to say, I can't do one word. Yeah, I used to say my leadership style was, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. You know, every role I had, you know, my first role was in Europe. We went over there to make the snowboards, to manufacture them in the 80s, because that's where all ski manufacturing was. You know, at one point we took this wood board and Jake said, hey, I bet we could make this like a ski. And all the production was over in Europe. So he went over to produce them, and all of a sudden I found myself selling them in Europe and running a warehouse and everything else. So all along my career, I've kind of had to figure it out. I think now maybe what I would say is, you know, I do play the role of visionary for the company, but I'm also very grounded. I'm also very grounded and practical in what people need.
All right. And favorite mountain to ride?
Stowe.
Oh, same.
And, you know, Jake used to have a saying that if your home mountain wasn't your favorite mountain, maybe you should move.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear
Yeah.
you.
No, Stowe offers so much.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, the trees, I mean, everything there.
Yeah.
Yep, love it. A book or podcast that's recently inspired you?
Yeah, I just read Walter Isaacson's Leonardo da Vinci. I love Walter Isaacson. He writes biographies, and he's really interested in creative geniuses. And, you know, I am not a creative genius, but I have a lot of creative geniuses in my company, and I'm very interested in it. And it's really that they don't see the difference between art and science. It's all one. When you think of Da Vinci, he was interested in engineering and anatomy, but also painting, and he didn't see that. And he also, these people that Isaacson writes about, and especially Leonardo da Vinci, it was so interesting, just radical curiosity. You know, how does a bird fly? How does water run? You know? So I was incredibly inspired by that.
And last one, what's one thing people misunderstand about you?
I will have people say, oh my God, she's so intimidating. I am so not intimidating. you know, so I think people have to get to know me.
Sure.
But maybe that comes back to that privilege and understanding the privilege that I have. But I am very open, I am very accessible. I like to surround myself with people who will challenge me, who will say, you know, that is really a stupid idea, you know, rather than yes men or whatever.
Yeah. Those are good people to have around.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and I really try to put those people around me. So I am not intimidating. I think people might misunderstand that.
Okay, well, Donna, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah.
story, insights, and your vision. It has been an honor.
Thank you.
Now we have Q&A. Do we have microphones that we're going to, oh, we do, all right. We've got microphones. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand and the microphone will find you right here in front. Thank you, we've got two.
I have a
We've
lot
got
of
two
voice.
microphones.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So inspiring to hear all that the company has done and all that you've done. I work in advertising and marketing, and I feel like Burton has the secret sauce of, for lack of a better word, being a cool brand. And what do you think, beyond all of the magnificent things that your company does, has kind of allowed for that brand to have such a aspirational kind of vibe?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the athletes, right? And really showing who they are. I think it's willing to take some risks, right? To be a little edgy. Jake used to say, you know, if you're going up against the line, you might cross it once in a while or whatever, but that willingness to take risks, and a sense of humor, right? This is about fun and joy and not taking ourselves too seriously. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we talk about content makers or whatever. We've been doing that since the beginning, you know, and really highlighting those athletes as aspirational.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you for being here. You mentioned your origin story as just like meeting, you know, the love of your life, and your path as being, you know, kind of like figuring it all out. But I wonder if you could talk about your own background in business. What did you do before this, and how do you have all these skills? It seems like you're able to take on pretty much any project.
Yeah, I went to college. I majored in political science. I saw myself going into either humanitarian work or human rights. And I met this guy in a bar. And my life changed. And for example, when we moved over to Europe, I was 22 years old.
Like, how old were you when you met?
20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 19
Wow.
actually. And so, and in some ways, I think that helped us be successful because we went in with a real sense of humility. You know, we went in saying, how do the Europeans do business? Or I went in saying, how is it different here? You know, when I remember a guy from a surf brand who, they're no longer in business, saying, we're going to teach the Europeans how to sell clothing. And I thought, well, they've been doing it 1,000 years before us. Maybe we can learn from them. And I have to say, typical female, I had to be pushed into my next roles. And it was, you know, I always say that if you have a promotion and you have a woman and a guy, the woman will give you 5 reasons why she's not ready for that job. And a guy will tell you 5 reasons he should have had that job last year, right? And so I remember when we came back from Europe, I had been running that company for 5 years. It had grown really well. But we wanted to come back to Vermont and raise our kids. And Jake said, we need a CFO. you need to become CFO. And I said, I can't be CFO. And he said, you just ran the European business. You can be CFO. And he actually asked me to be CEO like 3 years before I actually did it. So I had a cheerleader. You know, I had somebody who was really kind of pushing me into that direction. But it really was figuring it out and using a lot of mentors. You know, I always say we have a board of directors for our company, who are great advisors, but I also have a personal board of director, people I go to. Yeah, so it was a lot of it. We didn't have a roadmap.
Thank you, Donna. So, first a comment, then a question. In spite of the lines, I really miss the summer sale.
I
Really,
know,
really
it's gone, I know.
Yeah, really.
It used to be like an event.
It was an event, it was an event,
It's
yeah.
gone online
I
now.
know, okay, it's not the same.
No.
Has,
I hear you.
has a book been written about Burton, and if not, would you write one? Or have you been approached about a book about the company, the history?
Yeah, no, I think, no, it hasn't, but there was a movie made, and it's called Dear Rider, and you can see it on HBO. And it's funny because when Jake got sick in 2015 and really had to step away, and I said, you know, you should write a book. And he was like, oh. And then Red Bull approached him and said, we want to make a movie about it. He's like, yeah, that's what I would do. But I would think about it at some point. Yeah. But Dear Rider's a great movie, very inspiring, even if you're not a snowboarder.
All right, hi. I've always been curious about the relationship with you and your husband and as a team, right, running a business versus your home life, right, and how you made it work to do that. You gave us some insight that he was always a cheerleader for you, and so that's great to hear. I'm wondering, to your point of like leading with humility and listening when somebody says that's a stupid idea, I'm curious if you could share some stories with us where you had to tell him that's a stupid idea, or he had to tell you that was a stupid idea as part of being on a team.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in the beginning where it was, I mean, I'm telling you, it was tough. Like, I remember when I was CFO, I always say this is the moment I realized Burton was a family. Was we had we don't have any long-term debt, but we have very intense short-term borrowing needs because we produce this stuff and then we don't sell it until 6 months later. I had negotiated the best bank deal we had ever had. There was a banking crisis. This was in 1989. I was 6 months pregnant with George, and the bank pulled our loan for no fault of ours, but because they said they were a $20 billion bank and wanted to be a $12 billion bank, and they were getting rid of any risky loans. They saw ours as risky, and they literally pulled it in the middle. And I had to walk around to about 50 people and say, you know that paycheck you have? You can't cash it. It was a very difficult time. Nobody left. That's when I realized, wow, this is a family, like during the hard times. And I can remember at the exact same time we were having some product issues. And Jake was involved. We were having production issues. And I would come home and go, the bank, and he would come, the factory. And we had to stop. We had to put in, like, we are not talking business past 6 o'clock. And, you know, as things went on, we really didn't have to do that. But yeah, I think that was an advantage, that we both challenged each other and could tell each other, like, hey, you're acting like an idiot. You know, go apologize to that person or whatever. Yeah, and I think that kept us humble.
Thanks, Donna. A quick question. You mentioned the bank issue.
Yeah.
Can you expand a little more? I think my memory is foggy, but wasn't it in the 90s you were considering going public or taking outside capital and selling equity? Like, I'd love to hear how that decision was made and each side of the debate. I'm sure Jake had one opinion, you had another.
Yeah, well, what happened in the 90s was a couple of snowboard companies went public, right? And I think what was and so we looked at it, right? And what was most appealing to us was the reward we could have given the employees, right? Like if we had a stock and we could reward employees with that stock and it was growing and that they were feeling like they were a piece of it, right? But when we really looked into it and what it meant for us and how it would change decisions and so forth, we decided against it. And it's a lesson we learned also from the surf industry. I said we took a lesson from the ski industry. Well, the surf industry, Quicksilver, Billabong, they all went public. And it ruined their brands because they had to keep pumping out product. You've got to show quarterly growth to your shareholders. So thank God we didn't do it, but we did. It was tempting. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, I was wondering, oh sorry, I'm like blanking. I was wondering what the process was like when you first decided to join in on Burton and build it up from what it was, where your husband was working 14-hour days, getting it to start up. Like what brought you from saying like, this is my life partner and now also my business partner?
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of separation, right? Like, I remember we would, be in bed and the phone would ring and it would be kids from California because of the time change wanting a brochure. And you took the name and number and you were going to send them a brochure, any potential customer. He would need help dipping the product in there. What happened, this is what happened. So he decided in the mid-'80s to make a snowboard like a ski. And that was all done in Europe. So he said, hey, what if we go live in Europe for a year or two? I can work on this production. I actually got a job with a Vermont nonprofit, the Experiment in International Living. And I was going to be recruiting Austrian students to come live here and American students to go to Austria while he worked on production. And before we left, he said, hey, we've had a couple inquiries from Europe. Do you think you could take a look? We didn't realize that there was actually demand for the product over there. So I got over there. So I didn't have the intention of working for the company. I was going to work for this nonprofit. And we got over there, and the next thing I knew, I had declined the job. I was setting up a warehouse. I was looking for distributors in all. It was opportunity, right? And I've always thought of my own career that way. Like, is there value and opportunity that I can help the company achieve? So it was kind of by accident, and realizing that there was demand in Europe. And again, Jake turning to me and saying, you could run sales here. I was 22. Yeah.
Hello. We spend a lot of our time, we work for the fire department here, we spend a lot of our time talking about coaching, counseling, mentoring, and you've talked some about your successes in mentoring and coaching employees, but I'm sure it hasn't entirely been, sunshine and rainbows the entire time. So can you talk about an experience you've had dealing with a particularly difficult employee situation and what you learned from it?
Yeah, I guess one thing I would talk about, we had done this group of employees. We had sent them through some coaching, it was called the Vermont Center for Coaching. I'm not sure if they're around anymore. And this group of employees had gone through it, men and women. And I think it was about 12 of them. And the economic crisis hit in 2008. And they came to me and they said, morale is really low. We're not seeing transparency from the company. We don't feel connected to our global counterparts. We would like to take a role in that. And it exists today. We call it the Exchange. It's a grassroots group that works on getting feedback from the employees to the leadership about what the morale issues are, what do they want to see more transparency on. So that's kind of a success story. I mean, I always say with an employee that I offer coaching to, if I'm offering coaching to someone, I'm investing in them. And I'm assuming that they're going to come out of it the other side, you know, more effective and a better leader. I won't invest in coaching with someone that I don't think can make it. You know what I mean? If I'm having a problem with an employee and I've decided that it's time for them to move on, it's not the right position for them, they're not going to succeed in this position, I don't offer that person coaching. It's someone where I can see that they've got potential. And then, like I said, this group came back and offered the skills that they had learned to the whole company. I don't know if that answers your question. But I mean, mentoring and coaching is really worthwhile for somebody that you see real potential in.
Hi, you talked about environmental responsibility and sustainability and the importance of not doing it, of realizing doing it just for Burton was not enough and you needed to do it industry-wide. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on, in terms of sustainability of product recycling for not only snowboards but skis and other board sports. It seems like one of my frustrations is that just like with all recycling, it's being put on the consumer who really has very little say on how something is made, and it seems like something that the industry or government should be spearheading.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I mean, we are working on circularity, right? And we have piloted both product innovations and programs, you know, that we're starting to do. For example, you know, we're working with our LA store, if you bring in your jacket, it's going to go to a chill kit, right? And I think somebody can feel good about that. Our product people are working on materials where you will actually be able to take the snowboard apart at the end of life. We make benches out of it, we make chairs out of it, you know, there's a very vibrant used market, I think, that keeps things going, but I think circularity is something we are really focused on. And I agree with you. It's one of those things that, you know, a company can't do alone.
I think we have time for one more question. Or we can say thank you so much, Donna, for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I do something? Yes.
No, I haven't.
Thanks so much. Right?
Yeah, totally. We did. I think you saw change. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.